Katie Morrison crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel of her ship with a flashlight between her teeth and a wrench in her hand. The metal walls pressed close on both sides as she squeezed forward inch by inch. Sweat dripped down her face, despite the cold air that leaked through the hull breach somewhere ahead. 3 weeks had passed since she started this salvage job in deep space. 3 weeks of warning lights and system failures and mysterious alerts that made no sense. The wandering star was old but reliable. She had never given Katie this much trouble before. The tunnel curved downward and Katie followed it deeper into the ship. Her knees ached from crawling and her shoulders burned from the tight space. She wanted to finish this repair and get back to normal space where things made sense. Strange frost patterns covered the inner hull around her. They formed shapes that looked almost like writing, but Katie knew that was impossible. Ice formed in random patterns. It did not write messages. She reached a junction point where 3 tunnels met and stopped to check her scanner. The breach signal came from straight ahead, but the readings made no sense. The temperature showed -200 degrees in the next section. That could not be right. The ship would have frozen solid at that temperature. Katie tapped the scanner against her palm. Sometimes the old equipment needed encouragement. The numbers did not change. She crawled forward anyway. The tunnel opened into a larger space that should not exist. Katie pulled herself through the opening and stood up slowly. Her flashlight beam cut through darkness that seemed thicker than normal shadow. The air here felt different, heavy, ancient. She stood in a cargo bay that was not on any of the ship blueprints. The ceiling rose high above her head and the walls stretched far beyond what her light could reach. How was this space hiding inside her small salvage vessel? Rows of crystalline pods filled the chamber. Each one glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Katie walked forward on shaking legs and approached the nearest pod. Inside, she saw an egg. Not a chicken egg or any earth creature egg. This egg was massive and covered in scales that shimmered with colors that had no name. She counted the pods as she walked between the rows. 10, 20, 50, 100. The numbers kept climbing. 500 crystalline pods containing 500 impossible eggs. Katie reached out to touch one of the pods. The crystal felt warm under her fingers despite the freezing temperature around her. The moment her skin made contact with the surface, an alarm screamed through the chamber. Not a normal ship alarm. This sound came from somewhere else, somewhere beyond normal space. The pod under her hand blazed with light. Energy rippled outward in waves that passed through the other pods and made them all shine brighter. Katie stumbled backward and fell. Her flashlight rolled across the floor and the beam pointed toward the far wall. A woman stood there in the shadows. No, not a woman. Something that looked like a woman but was clearly more. She stood 7 feet tall with silver hair that moved without any wind. Her ears rose to sharp points and her eyes glowed with their own inner light. She wore armor that seemed made from starlight and darkness woven together. Behind the woman, something massive moved, a creature that should not fit inside any ship. Red scales caught the light from the pods, wings folded against a body the size of a small fighter craft. Eyes like burning coals fixed on Katie with terrible intelligence. Katie could not move, could not breathe, could not think. The woman spoke and her voice echoed with power that made Katie's bones vibrate. You have just awakened something that should have stayed buried until the stars burn cold. The devourers will sense what you have done. Katie found her voice somehow. Who are you? My name is Lyra Moonwhisper. This is Ember. We have guarded these eggs for 10,000 years. And you just told our enemies exactly where to find them. Katie opened her mouth to ask what enemies when the ship's emergency klaxons began wailing. She knew that sound. Incoming vessels. Multiple contacts. Lyra moved faster than Katie could follow. One moment she stood across the chamber. The next she was right beside Katie, pulling her to her feet with one hand. The dragon Ember roared, and the sound shook the entire ship. How many are coming? Lyra demanded. Katie fumbled for her communicator. 12 ships. No identification signals. They just appeared out of nowhere. Lyra's face showed an expression Katie could not read. Sorrow mixed with rage, mixed with something older than both. 12 hunters. They move fast. We need to leave this system now. The dragon moved through the cargo bay toward the far wall. No, through the wall. Ember passed through solid metal like it was smoke and disappeared. Katie stared at the unmarked wall where a creature the size of a bus had just vanished. Dragons exist outside your laws of physics, Lyra said as if reading Katie's mind. Come, we must reach your bridge before the devourers begin firing. Before Katie could respond, Lyra grabbed her and the world twisted. One heartbeat, Katie stood in the cargo bay. The next heartbeat, she stood on the bridge of the Wandering Star with Lyra beside her. Katie's stomach lurched and she tasted metal. The view screen showed 12 ships in a circle around the Wandering Star. They did not look like any vessels Katie had seen before. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence, partly in normal space and partly somewhere else. One of the ships fired. A beam of energy that was not quite light and not quite matter lanced toward the Wandering Star. Katie braced for impact. The beam struck something invisible around the ship and scattered into rainbow fragments. Ember materialized outside the view screen. The dragon had wrapped around the Wandering Star like a shield. Each scale blazed with power that deflected the attack. That will not hold for long, Lyra said. Your ship. Can it run? Katie threw herself into the pilot seat and her hands flew across the controls. She was a salvage engineer, not a combat pilot, but she knew how to make the Wandering Star move when she needed to. We can run. We cannot fight, then run. Lyra moved to stand behind Katie's chair. I will tell you where to go. Katie engaged the engines and the Wandering Star shot forward. 3 of the enemy ships moved to intercept, but Ember slammed into them with claws and teeth and flames that burned in colors Katie had never seen. The ships scattered. Head for that nebula. Lyra pointed at a cloud of gas and dust on the edge of the system. We can hide there while I explain what you have stumbled into. Katie pushed the engines to maximum. The Wandering Star was built for salvage work, not speed, but she had made modifications over the years. Illegal modifications that let her outrun patrol ships when necessary. Those modifications saved her life now. The ship raced toward the nebula with 12 hunters in pursuit. Energy beams cut through space around them. Ember flew alongside, deflecting what he could, but some shots got through. The shields flickered and alarms wailed as systems took damage. They reached the edge of the nebula and plunged into the thick clouds. Sensor readings went crazy in the interference. Katie cut the main engines and let momentum carry them deeper while she activated every stealth system she had. The 12 ships circled the nebula but did not enter. Katie watched them on passive sensors. Why are they not following? Katie asked. They fear what lives in this nebula more than they want those eggs, Lyra said quietly. We have perhaps an hour before they work up the courage or call for reinforcements. I need to tell you what those eggs are and why the devourers will burn entire star systems to get them back. Lyra stood in the center of the bridge while the nebula clouds swirled outside. Her silver hair still moved without wind and her eyes held the weight of ages. Katie had so many questions, but she waited for the elf woman to speak. 10,000 years ago there was a war, Lyra began. Not between nations or planets, a war between realities. My people, the starborn elves and the dragon lords fought against the devourers. Creatures that consume entire civilizations. They eat planets and stars and the very fabric of space itself. Katie gripped the pilot controls. That sounds impossible. Many impossible things are true. Lyra moved to the view screen and touched it gently. The devourers came from another dimension, a place of endless hunger and darkness. They found a way through into our reality and began feeding. Worlds fell. Billions died. The dragons were our only hope. Why dragons? Katie asked. Dragons are not just powerful creatures. They are living keys. Each dragon, when bonded with a guardian, maintains barriers between dimensions. Without enough dragons, the walls between realities grow thin. The devourers can spread and nothing can stop them. Ember appeared outside the view screen. Even through the thick metal and glass, Katie could feel the dragon's presence like heat from a fire. The dragon's eyes met hers, and Katie felt something touch her mind. Not words, feelings, ancient sorrow and determination, and a promise of protection. We were winning the war, Lyra continued. The dragons and my people had pushed the devourers back. We had sealed most of the dimensional breaches. Then they released a plague, a corruption that infected dragon eggs. Any egg exposed to it would hatch twisted. Wrong. Those corrupted dragons became weapons for the devourers. Katie's stomach turned cold. The eggs on my ship are the last uncorrupted clutch in existence, Lyra said. 500 eggs that we saved from the plague. My people placed them in temporal stasis, outside of time itself. We hid them in a ship designed to drift through space until the devourers were extinct. 10,000 years we waited. 10,000 years of silence. Until I repaired my hull, Katie realized. Your repairs disrupted the temporal shields. The eggs exist in normal time again. Every devourer in this galaxy and beyond can sense them now. They will never stop hunting, never stop searching. Those eggs are the only thing that can restore the dimensional barriers and end their invasion of our reality. Katie stared at the swirling nebula clouds. 12 ships waited outside. How many more would come? How long could they run? The ship's sensors suddenly screamed a warning. Katie checked the readings and her heart sank. 30 more contacts dropping out of hyperspace around the nebula. Then 50. Then 100. They called reinforcements, Katie whispered. Of course they did, Lyra said calmly. We need to leave this system. Head for the Veil Rift. It is 3 light years from here. My ship cannot travel 3 light years before they catch us, Katie said. Lyra smiled, and it was not a human expression. Your ship cannot. But Ember can create a slipstream. We will ride his wake through folded space. Hold tight. Before Katie could ask what that meant, Ember roared outside. The sound was impossible in the vacuum of space, but Katie heard it anyway. The dragon's body began to glow, brighter and brighter, until looking at him hurt Katie's eyes. Space itself rippled around Ember. A tunnel of twisted reality formed in front of the dragon. Ember dove into it, and the tunnel pulled the wandering star along behind him. Katie felt her body stretch and compress at the same time. Colors that should not exist flashed past the view screen. The ship's instruments went wild, showing readings that made no sense. They were traveling faster than light, faster than anything Katie had ever imagined. The journey lasted 3 seconds or 3 hours. Katie could not tell. Time felt wrong in the slipstream. When they emerged back into normal space, Katie gasped for air and realized she had been holding her breath. The Veil Rift spread before them, a massive tear in space where stars looked wrong and physics behaved strangely. Katie had heard stories about this place. Salvage crews avoided it. Ships that went in rarely came out. This is your plan, Katie asked. Hide in the most dangerous region of known space. The devourers fear the veil, Lyra said. Ancient things dwell here, things older than the devourers themselves. We will be safe for a time. Katie guided the ship into the rift carefully. The instrument still showed impossible readings, but she trusted her instincts. The nebula had taught her that sometimes sensors lied. A fleet of human ships appeared on the far side of the rift. Military vessels, big ones. They moved to intercept the wandering star with weapons armed. More trouble, Katie muttered. Perhaps, or perhaps help. Lyra tilted her head as if listening to something Katie could not hear. The lead ship is commanded by someone named Lisa Brooks. She seeks answers about the alien attacks on human colonies. How do you know that? Katie asked. I can hear her thoughts at this distance. All Starborn can read the minds of lesser species when we choose. Katie decided not to think too hard about what that meant for her privacy. The communication system crackled to life. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Lisa Brooks of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are harboring a fugitive and illegal cargo. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Katie looked at Lyra. Do I answer? Tell her the truth, that you found 500 dragon eggs and the creatures hunting them have begun attacking human colonies to draw us out. See if she believes you. Katie activated the communication link. Commander Brooks, this is Katie Morrison of the salvage vessel Wandering Star. I am not harboring a fugitive. I am trying to save your species from extinction. The attacks on your colonies are because of cargo I accidentally discovered on my ship. Dragon eggs, 500 of them, and the things hunting these eggs will not stop until they consume everything. Silence on the other end of the line. Katie could imagine the commander's face. The disbelief, the anger, the confusion. Finally, Brooks spoke again. Morrison, you are either insane or telling the truth. Either way, I need to see this cargo myself. Will you allow my science team to board? Katie looked at Lyra. The elf woman nodded. You can board, Katie said. But Commander, bring weapons, all of them, and be prepared for things you cannot explain. The human fleet moved closer. A shuttle detached from the lead ship and approached the Wandering Star. Katie opened the docking port and waited. Commander Brooks came aboard with 6 armed soldiers and a woman in a science uniform. The scientist had red hair and carried enough scanning equipment to open a lab. Her name tag read Dr. Claire Hamilton. Brooks saw Lyra first, and every soldier raised their weapons. The commander's hand went to her sidearm. Stand down, Katie said quickly. She is not the enemy. She is not human, Brooks said without lowering her weapon. No, Lyra agreed, stepping forward. I am not. I am older than your species. I have fought in wars before your son was born, and I am your only hope against what is coming. Dr. Hamilton pushed past the soldiers with her scanner active. She pointed it at Lyra, and the readings made her gasp. This is impossible. The energy signature, the cellular structure. You are reading as being 3,000 years old. Older. Lyra corrected. But who is counting? Hamilton turned to Katie. Where are these eggs? Follow me. Katie led them through the ship to the hidden cargo bay. When the doors opened and Brooks saw the 500 glowing pods, her weapon finally lowered. Sweet mercy, Brooks whispered. Hamilton ran forward with her scanner working overtime. She moved from pod to pod, taking readings and making small sounds of amazement. Commander, these readings, these eggs do not just contain dragons. Each one holds genetic data from dozens of extinct species. This is a genetic ark, a library of lost civilizations. The Devourers destroy everything they touch, Lyra explained. The dragons saved what they could before those worlds fell. Each egg is a legacy, a chance to bring back what was lost. How do we protect them? Brooks asked, turning to face Lyra. You cannot, not alone. But humans have something the ancient races did not. You evolved late. You never encountered magic before reaching the stars. That makes you unpredictable. Your technology works differently than ours. The Devourers have trouble adapting to it. So we can fight them, Katie said. You can survive them, Lyra corrected. Long enough for the eggs to hatch and bond with guardians. Long enough to restore the barriers and seal the Devourers back in their own dimension. One of Hamilton's scanners started beeping urgently. She ran to a specific pod and her face went pale. Commander, this egg, it is cracking. Everyone turned to look. Hairline fractures spread across the crystalline surface of one pod. Blue light leaked through the cracks, growing brighter. That is too soon, Lyra said, and Katie heard fear in her voice for the first time. They should not hatch for weeks yet. The pod shattered. Something emerged from the broken crystal. Not a dragon. A shadow that had form but no substance. It screamed, and the sound was not heard with ears. It was felt in the mind, in the soul. Soldiers fell to their knees, clutching their heads. Hamilton collapsed. Brooks managed to stay standing, but blood dripped from her nose. Katie felt the scream trying to tear her thoughts apart, but she gritted her teeth and stayed conscious. Lyra moved. Her armor blazed with light, and she drew a sword that appeared from nowhere. She slashed at the shadow thing, but the blade passed through without touching it. The shadow creature flowed across the floor toward the other eggs. Its scream changed. Changed into words that Katie understood, but wished she did not. Hunger, feed, consume, corrupt, spread, a devourer parasite. Lyra shouted over the mental screaming. It survived the purge inside the egg. We have to contain it before it reaches the others. Katie ran to an emergency panel and activated the cargo bay's atmospheric controls. She vented all the air and dropped the temperature to absolute zero. The shadow creature did not even slow down. "It does not need air or heat," Lyra said. "It exists partially in another dimension. We need both human technology and elven magic working together." "Tell me what to do," Katie demanded. Lyra began chanting in a language that hurt to hear. Her sword blazed brighter. The shadow creature hesitated as if the light caused it pain. "Your shield generators," Lyra gasped out between words of power. "Can you reverse their polarity and create a containment field inside this chamber?" Katie's fingers flew across the control panel. She had modified these shields a dozen illegal ways. Maybe one of those modifications would work. She rerouted power and reversed the polarity and prayed to whatever might be listening. A field of crackling energy sprang up around the shadow creature. It screamed again and threw itself against the barrier. The shields held, but Katie could see them failing. Seconds. Maybe a minute. Now. Lyra commanded. The elf woman drove her sword into the floor. Light exploded outward in a wave that washed over the containment field. Where the light and technology met, they merged. The shield became something new, something that existed in both dimensions at once. The shadow creature slammed against this new barrier and could not pass through. It raged and screamed, but the field held. Brooks pulled herself up using a railing. Her soldiers were starting to recover. Hamilton lay unconscious, but breathing. "What was that thing?" Brooks demanded. "Our first taste of what is coming," Lyra said tiredly. "The devourers planted parasites in some eggs during the war. I thought we had purged them all. I was wrong." Katie checked the containment field. It was stable for now, but would not last forever. "We need a permanent solution. There is only one," Lyra said, looking at the remaining eggs. "We must find the dragon temple on the lost world of Ether Moor. There is a purification ritual that can cleanse the corruption from all the eggs. But Ether Moor has not existed in normal space for 5,000 years. "Can you bring it back?" Katie asked. Lyra's expression was answer enough. Yes. But the cost would be high. The containment field around the shadow creature pulsed with unstable energy. Katie watched the power levels dropping and knew they had hours at most before it failed. The thing inside screamed without sound and threw itself against the barriers over and over. Dr. Hamilton woke slowly with Brooks kneeling beside her. The scientist's eyes focused and she gasped, remembering what had happened. She scrambled to her feet, despite Brooks trying to make her rest. "I need to scan the other eggs," Hamilton said, grabbing her equipment. "If one was corrupted, there might be more." "She is right," Lyra said. "We must know which eggs are safe and which carry parasites." Hamilton worked quickly, moving from pod to pod with her scanner. Katie helped her record the readings while Brooks organized her soldiers to guard the cargo bay entrance. No one knew if more devourer ships had followed them through the Veil Rift. After an hour of scanning, Hamilton had checked every egg. She looked exhausted and worried. "Commander," I have found 17 more eggs showing the same energy signature as the corrupted one. 17 more parasites waiting to hatch. Can we destroy those eggs? Brooks asked. No, Lyra said sharply. Each egg contains genetic legacy from extinct species. Destroying them would erase those civilizations from existence forever. We must purify them, not destroy them. Then we need this ritual you mentioned, Brooks said. This dragon temple on the lost world. How do we get there? Lyra walked to the center of the cargo bay and closed her eyes. Her silver hair lifted as if caught in wind that did not exist. When she spoke, her voice echoed with power. Ethermoor was the first world where dragons and elves bonded. It was sacred ground. When the Devourers invaded, we moved it out of phase with normal reality to protect it. The temple remains there along with the knowledge we need. So bring it back, Katie said. You said you could do it. I can. Lyra opened her eyes and they glowed brighter. But the ritual requires a sacrifice. I must sever my bond with Ember. The connection between us is what anchors me to this dimension. Breaking it will free enough power to pull Ethermoor back into normal space. But Ember and I will both be left half alive, neither fully in this world nor fully outside it. That is insane, Katie protested. There has to be another way. There is not. Lyra said quietly. I have had 10,000 years to search for alternatives. This is the only path. Ember appeared outside the cargo bay. The dragon pressed against the hull, and Katie felt his presence like a physical weight. The mental touch she had felt before returned stronger now. She felt Ember's emotions, his love for Lyra, his willingness to pay any price to save the eggs, his acceptance of what must be done. He agrees, Katie whispered. Of course he does. Lyra's voice cracked slightly. We have been one being for 3,000 years. Neither of us fears death, but being torn apart while still alive, that is a different kind of ending. Hamilton had been working on her scanner while they talked. She looked up suddenly. There might be another option. What if we could share the burden? Explain, Brooks commanded. The bonding process. Hamilton gestured at her readings. It creates a quantum entanglement between dragon and guardian. If we could create a new bond with one of the uncorrupted eggs while simultaneously maintaining the old bond, it might distribute the energy drain. Instead of Lyra sacrificing everything, she would only sacrifice part of her connection. That has never been attempted, Lyra said. The bonding ritual is sacred, dangerous. Attempting to hold two bonds at once could kill whoever tries it. I will do it, Katie heard herself say. The words came out before she had time to think. Everyone turned to stare at her. Katie, you do not understand what you are offering, Lyra said. The bonding process rewrites you at a cellular level. It merges your consciousness with another being. Many candidates die during the ritual. Those who survive are changed forever. I know. Katie said, though she did not really know at all. But you have been protecting these eggs for 10,000 years. You have sacrificed everything already. Let me help carry the weight. Brooks stepped forward. Morrison, I cannot authorize this. You are a civilian. This is beyond any reasonable risk. I am not asking for authorization, Katie said, meeting the commander's eyes. Those things out there are hunting us because I found the eggs, because I disrupted the temporal shields. This is my responsibility. Hamilton checked her equipment. If we are going to attempt this, we need to prepare quickly. The containment field will fail in 6 hours. We need the purification ritual complete before then, or that parasite will escape and corrupt the other eggs. Lyra studied Katie for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. Very well. But understand this. Once we begin the ritual, there is no stopping. You will bond with a dragon or you will die trying. Are you certain? Katie thought about running, about refusing, about living a normal life. Then she remembered the shadow creature's scream and the hungry darkness in its non-voice. She remembered the 12 ships that had hunted them and the colonies that Brooks said were under attack. I am certain. Katie lied because being certain would have meant she was crazy. Hamilton directed soldiers to clear a space in the center of the cargo bay. Lyra brought forth one of the golden eggs, not one showing corruption, a pure egg that pulsed with warm light. This one, Lyra said, placing the egg on the floor. I can feel the spirit within, strong, brave, female. She will bond well with you if you survive. Katie knelt beside the egg. It was larger than she expected, nearly 3 feet tall and covered in scales that shifted through shades of gold and silver. What do I do? Katie asked. Place both hands on the egg. Lyra knelt across from her. I will begin the chant. The dragon inside will sense your presence and reach out to your mind. You must reach back. Open yourself completely. Hold nothing back. If you resist even slightly, the bond will fail and kill you both. Brooks and her soldiers formed a protective circle around them. Hamilton set up monitoring equipment to record what happened. Lyra placed her own hands on the egg beside Katie's. Their fingers touched, and Katie felt a jolt of energy pass between them. The elf woman began to chant, words in a language older than stars. Each syllable carried power that made the air shimmer. The egg grew warm under Katie's palms, then hot, then burning. Katie gritted her teeth and did not pull away. The egg began to glow. Light leaked through the scales in golden rays. Katie felt something brush against her mind, a presence, curious, cautious, young but ancient at the same time. She reached back with her thoughts the way Lyra had instructed. Hello, I am Katie. Will you bond with me? The presence grew stronger. It examined her, looked through her memories, her hopes, her fears, everything that made Katie who she was, lay open and vulnerable. Then the dragon accepted. Pain exploded through Katie's body. Every cell felt like it was being torn apart and rebuilt. Her DNA rewrote itself. Her consciousness expanded to hold another mind alongside her own. She screamed, but could not hear her own voice. In the distance, Lyra's chant changed. The elf woman added new words, ancient binding phrases that wove together 3 souls instead of 2. Katie felt Lyra and Ember joining the bond, felt the terrible sacrifice as their connection began to tear. Images flashed through Katie's mind, memories not her own. She saw the war 10,000 years ago, saw worlds burning under devourer assault, saw dragons falling from the sky, saw Lyra and Ember fighting side by side against impossible odds. She saw the moment they hid the eggs, saw the pain of watching an entire civilization die to buy time for 500 unborn dragons to escape. She saw loneliness. 10,000 years of waiting, watching, hoping, and she saw hope, saw humanity reaching the stars. Saw the potential in this young species that never knew magic, saw why the eggs had been hidden until now, until humans were ready to become the next guardians. The visions faded. The pain faded. Katie opened eyes she had not realized were closed. The egg lay cracked open in front of her. Inside was a dragon, small, no larger than a cat. Gold and silver scales caught the light. Eyes like liquid sunshine looked up at Katie with love and trust and ancient wisdom. Frost. The name came to Katie without thinking. Your name is Frost. The dragon made a sound like wind chimes and climbed into Katie's arms. The moment they touched, Katie felt the bond solidify. They were separate beings, but also one. She could feel Frost's thoughts as clearly as her own, could sense the dragon's emotions and instincts. And she could feel Lyra and Ember. The bond connected all 4 of them now, though weaker between Katie and the ancient pair. The sacrifice had worked, but the cost was terrible. Lyra collapsed. Ember crashed to the floor of the cargo bay, having somehow materialized inside the ship. Both elf and dragon looked diminished, faded, as if part of their substance had been drained away. Brooks rushed to Lyra's side. Hamilton checked the dragon's vital signs with her scanner. They are stable, Hamilton reported. but their energy levels are at 30% of what they were. The bond severance nearly killed them both. Lyra opened her eyes and managed a weak smile. But it worked. I can feel Ethermore responding. The world is coming back into phase. Katie stood carefully. Frost perched on her shoulder, and even at cat size, the dragon's weight was significant. Through their bond, Katie could feel Frost's hunger and curiosity and fierce determination. "How long until the world appears?" Katie asked. "Hours," Lyra said. "We must prepare. The ritual at the temple is complex. We need to transport all the eggs there, including the corrupted ones. The purification must happen simultaneously, or risk spreading the parasites. I will organize the transport," Brooks said, already barking orders at her soldiers. "We can use cargo shuttles from the fleet." Katie felt something change through her bond with Frost. A warning, danger approaching. The ship's alarms confirmed it a moment later. Contacts dropping out of hyperspace, hundreds of them. The Devourers had found them again, and leading the fleet was something massive, something that registered on the sensors as both a ship and a living creature. Katie pulled up the visual and her blood turned to ice. It was a dragon, corrupted and twisted. Scales that had once been beautiful now looked diseased. Eyes that should have held intelligence burned with mindless hunger. The creature was 3 times the size of Ember and radiated wrongness. Lyra saw it and made a sound of pure anguish. Nightfang. My mate. I thought he died in the war. Katie understood. The corrupted dragon was Lyra's bonded partner from before she met Ember, the dragon she had loved for thousands of years before the Devourers took him. "He has been their weapon this whole time," Lyra whispered. "Everything, every move we made. He was leading them to us because he still knows me, still feels the old bond." The corrupted dragon opened its mouth and roared. The sound carried across space through dimensions. It was a challenge and a promise of destruction. Brooks grabbed her communicator. "All ships' battle stations. Protect the wandering star at all costs. We hold them here until the ritual world appears." Katie held Frost close and felt the little dragon's determination matching her own. They had hours to wait for Ethermore to phase in. Hours to hold against a fleet and a corrupted dragon that knew all of Lyra's tactics. This was going to be the longest battle of Katie's life. The corrupted dragon Nightfang led the Devourer fleet straight toward the human ships. Katie watched from the bridge as Commander Brooks organized the defense. 20 human vessels formed a protective shell around the wandering star, while cargo shuttles worked frantically to transfer the dragon eggs. Lyra stood beside Katie, looking more fragile than before. The bond severance had aged her somehow, or perhaps she had always been this worn and simply hid it well. "Can you reach him?" Katie asked. "Through the old bond." "I have been trying," Lyra said quietly. "But the corruption is too strong. All I feel is hunger and rage. Nothing of the dragon I loved remains." Frost chirped from Katie's shoulder. The little dragon sent feelings of comfort through their bond. Katie felt the gesture was directed at Lyra as much as herself. The first wave of Devourer ships opened fire. Energy beams that existed partially in other dimensions lanced across space. The human ships returned fire with missiles and railguns and laser batteries. Katie expected the human weapons to be useless against enemies that could phase between realities. She was wrong. The Devourer ships reeled under the assault. Their shields flickered and failed. Several ships exploded in bursts of twisted light. Lyra actually smiled. "I told you. Human technology is unpredictable. You never learned magic, so your weapons operate on pure physics. The Devourers cannot adapt easily." "But we cannot hurt the dragon," Brooks said grimly. "Look." Nightfang flew through the human weapons fire without even slowing. Missiles exploded against his corrupted scales and did nothing. Laser beams scattered harmlessly. The dragon opened his mouth and breathed corruption. The blast struck one of the human ships. Metal warped and twisted. Crew members screamed as the corruption spread through their vessel, turning it into something wrong. Something that should not exist, insane reality. Brooks ordered the infected ship destroyed before the corruption could spread. Katie watched in horror as human missiles obliterated one of their own vessels. Ember launched himself at Nightfang. The two dragons collided in a blast of energy that lit up space like a newborn star. They tore at each other with claws and teeth, bit and slashed and burned. But Ember was weakened from the bond severance. Nightfang was 3 times his size and fueled by corruption. The battle was not even close. Nightfang slammed Ember into an asteroid. The impact shattered rock and sent fragments spinning. Ember tried to recover, but Nightfang was already on him. Jaws closed around Ember's throat. "No," Lyra gasped. She grabbed the railing to stay standing. Through the damaged bond, she felt every wound Ember suffered. Katie felt it too through her connection to Lyra. She felt Ember's pain and desperation. The dragon was losing. She did not think, did not plan. Katie simply acted. She dove into the bond with Frost, dove deeper than she had gone before. Through Frost, she could touch Lyra. Through Lyra, she could touch Ember. And through Ember, she could touch the corrupted dragon that had once been Nightfang. Katie found herself in a place that was not a place, a mindscape where thoughts had form and consciousness existed without bodies. She stood in darkness, surrounded by hunger and rage. Nightfang's corrupted mind was a maze of twisted passages and broken memories. Katie walked through them, searching. The corruption tried to grab her, tried to consume her thoughts, but she pushed forward. Deep in the center of the maze, she found a tiny spark, a fragment of the dragon Nightfang had been before the Devourers took him. It was small and weak and nearly crushed under the weight of corruption, but it was still there. Katie reached for it. The corruption sensed what she was doing and swarmed to stop her. Claws of darkness tore at her mind. Teeth made of entropy bit into her consciousness. Then Frost was there. The little golden dragon blazed with light in the mental darkness. She was small but fierce and filled with newborn determination. Together they pushed through the corruption. Together they reached the spark that was Nightfang's true self. Katie touched it gently. Remember. She sent the thought with all her strength. Remember who you were. Remember who you loved. The spark flickered. Memories rose from it. Memories of Lyra, of flying together through nebulae and dancing between stars, of bonding for the first time, of fighting side by side against the first Devourer invasion. The spark grew brighter. In the real world, Nightfang suddenly went still. His jaws released Ember. The corrupted dragon's head turned and his eyes focused on the wandering star, on Lyra. Inside the mindscape, Katie felt the corruption realize what was happening. It gathered all its strength and tried to crush the spark completely, tried to destroy the last fragment of Nightfang before it could grow. Lyra appeared in the mindscape. The elf woman blazed with silver fire. She threw herself between the corruption and the spark. "I will not lose you again," Lyra screamed. "Not after 10,000 years, not when you are this close." She wrapped her consciousness around the spark and fed it her own energy. The spark blazed brighter. Memories flooded back. Personality reformed. Nightfang's voice echoed through the mindscape, weak but present. "Lyra, I am sorry. I let them take me. I thought I could resist long enough for you to escape. I failed. You did not fail." Lyra's mental voice was fierce. "You held on. Part of you survived 10,000 years of corruption and waited. That is not failure. That is the strongest thing I have ever seen." The corruption roared in fury and threw everything it had at them. Katie felt her mind being torn apart. Frost screamed. Lyra's defenses crumbled. Then Ember joined them. The dragon poured his remaining strength into the battle. 4 minds united against the corruption. 4 souls fighting as one. Slowly, inch by terrible inch, they pushed the corruption back, carved out space for Nightfang's true self to exist. It was not enough to fully purge him. The corruption was too deeply rooted, but they created a pocket of clarity, a space where Nightfang could think and choose and be himself again, even while the corruption raged around him. In the real world, Nightfang pulled back from the battle. The dragon's eyes cleared slightly. When he spoke, his voice echoed in everyone's mind. "I cannot hold this for long. The corruption will take me again soon. But I can give you time. Lead the eggs to the temple. I will hold my fleet back as long as I can." The dragon turned and roared at the Devourer's ships. It was a command and a threat. The ships hesitated, confused by their leader's sudden change. Nightfang attacked his own fleet, tore into the ships with savage fury. The Devourers tried to flee, but the corrupted dragon was too fast, too strong. He destroyed ship after ship, buying precious minutes, but Katie could feel the corruption fighting back, could feel Nightfang losing control again. In the mindscape, Lyra held the spark of her mate's consciousness and wept. "I have to let you go again," she whispered. "I cannot hold the purification ritual and hold you at the same time." "I know." Nightfang's voice was fading. "But you will save the eggs, save the new generation. That is all that matters." Katie pulled herself out of the mindscape. She gasped and found herself on the bridge floor. Frost lay beside her, exhausted. Brooks knelt over them both, checking for injuries. "The shuttles," Katie gasped out. "Are the eggs transferred?" "Last batch loading now," Brooks confirmed. "Ethermore has appeared. We can see it on sensors. A planet materializing out of nowhere. Go." Katie pushed herself up. "We need to reach the temple before Nightfang loses control." The wandering star and the remaining human fleet raced toward the planet. Behind them, Nightfang was losing his battle with the corruption. Katie could feel it through the bond, could feel him slipping. The dragon gave them one last gift. He gathered all his remaining will and jumped into hyperspace, took half the Devourer fleet with him, dragged them far away from Ethermore. The dragon's final thought echoed in Lyra's mind, and Katie heard it through their connection. "I loved you. I love you still. Forgive me." Then he was gone, consumed by corruption again, lost. Lyra collapsed, sobbing. Katie held her while Frost tried to offer comfort. Ember landed in one of the cargo bays, wounded and weak but alive. They had reached Ethermore. The Dragon Temple waited on the surface, an ancient structure of stone and crystal built when the universe was young, but they had paid a terrible price to get here, and the hardest part was still ahead. Dr. Hamilton ran scans of the planet while the ships entered orbit. The temple is on the northern continent, large enough to hold all 500 eggs. "But, Commander, we have a problem." "Of course we do," Brooks muttered. "What now?" "The purification ritual requires 5 bonded pairs to anchor it. We have Lyra and Ember. We have Katie and Frost. We need 3 more." Katie looked at Brooks. The commander looked at Hamilton. The scientist looked at the soldiers standing guard. "We need volunteers," Katie said. 3 people willing to bond with dragons right now. No training, no preparation, just faith. Brooks stepped forward without hesitation. "I will do it." Hamilton hesitated only a moment before nodding. "I will too." A young soldier named Amy Carter raised her hand. "I volunteer, ma'am. My family was killed when the Devourers attacked our colony. I want to fight back." Brooks clasped the soldier's shoulder. "You are braver than most. Thank you." They landed on Ethermore and carried the eggs into the temple. The structure was massive and beautiful and somehow sad. Empty halls that had once held thousands now stood silent. 5 golden eggs were brought to the ritual chamber. Brooks, Hamilton, Carter, Each placed their hands on an egg and prepared to bond or die trying. Lyra began the chant. The same words she had used with Katie. Ancient power filled the temple. Katie watched as 3 more humans screamed and burned and were rewritten at the cellular level. Watched as 3 more dragons hatched and bonded. Brooks bonded with a storm-gray dragon she named Thunder. Hamilton bonded with a crystalline dragon of pure thought she named Prism. Carter bonded with a forest green dragon she named Jade. All 3 women survived. Barely. 5 bonded pairs stood in the ritual chamber. 5 anchors for the purification ritual. "Now comes the hard part," Lyra said. "We must cleanse 500 eggs of corruption while fighting the parasites that will resist. Some of us may not survive." Katie held Frost close and felt the dragon's determination matching her own. "Then let us begin." The 5 bonded pairs stood in a circle around the dragon eggs. 500 crystalline pods arranged in perfect rows filled the temple chamber. Each pod pulsed with blue light except for the 18 corrupted ones which glowed sickly green. Lyra raised her hands and began the purification chant. Her voice echoed through the ancient stone building. The other 4 women did not know the words, but they felt the rhythm, felt the power building. Through her bond with Frost, Katie felt something vast awakening. The temple itself was alive in some way. Ancient magic woven into every stone responded to Lyra's call. Light blazed from the floor. Patterns that had been invisible suddenly glowed. They formed a massive circle connecting all 5 bonded pairs. Lines of power linked each person to their dragon and each pair to the others. The ritual began. Katie felt energy flowing through her. Not just her own life force. She was connected to Frost and through Frost to all the other dragons, the unhatched eggs, the corrupted ones, even distant Ember who lay wounded in the cargo bay. And she felt something else, something she had not expected. Through the bond to the eggs, she experienced their genetic memories. Each egg held more than just a dragon. Each one contained the legacy of species that the Dragon Lords had tried to save from the Devourers. Katie saw worlds she could not name. Civilizations that had burned to ash 10,000 years ago. She saw their last moments. Parents hiding children, warriors making final stands, scientists desperately recording their knowledge hoping someone would find it. Every egg was a library. Every egg was a memorial. Every egg was hope that something would survive. The corrupted eggs fought back. The parasites inside them sensed the purification ritual and resisted. They screamed with voices that existed only in minds. They clawed at the bonds between dragons and guardians trying to break the circle. Brooks gritted her teeth as her newly formed bond with Thunder was tested. The soldier's body shook, but she held firm. Thunder roared and breathed storm winds that somehow existed inside the temple. Hamilton's bond with Prism allowed her to see the corruption as data, as equations and formulas. She began calling out weak points in the parasite defenses, and the other pairs focused their energy there. Carter and Jade worked in perfect harmony despite having bonded only an hour ago. The young soldier moved with instincts she did not know she possessed. Jade's forest green scales blazed with life energy that pushed back the death and hunger of the corruption. But it was not enough. The parasites were too deeply rooted. For every inch of corruption, they purged 2 more inches spread through other eggs. "We are losing," Brooks shouted over the mental screaming. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. "Katie, you must go deeper. You bonded while connected to me and Ember. Your bond is different, stronger. Use it." Katie did not understand, but she tried anyway. She dove into her connection with Frost. Through the little dragon, she touched the other eggs, touched the genetic memories stored within them. And she understood what Lyra meant. The Devourers fed on death and entropy. They consumed civilizations and grew stronger. But they had a weakness, a fundamental flaw in their existence. They could not exist in the presence of creation, of hope, of life choosing to persist against impossible odds. Katie focused on the memories in the eggs, focused on the parents who hid their children, the warriors who fought knowing they would lose, the scientists who recorded knowledge for a future they would never see. Every one of those beings had chosen hope over despair, had chosen to fight even when fighting was pointless, had chosen to save what they could rather than surrender to the inevitable. That choice, that defiance, that was the weapon. Katie channeled those memories into the purification ritual, fed them into the circle of power connecting the 5 pairs. The energy changed, shifted from defensive to creative. The corruption parasites screamed louder. They threw themselves against the bonds with renewed fury. But now, instead of just resisting them, the ritual was actively creating something new. The corrupted eggs began to change. The sickly green light flickered, dimmed. The parasites inside felt their hold weakening. One of the corrupted eggs cracked. A shadow parasite tried to escape like before. But this time, Katie was ready. She and Frost caught it with bonds of pure creative energy, wrapped it in memories of hope and defiance. The parasite writhed and shrieked, but could not break free. Then something amazing happened. The memories did not just trap the parasite, they began to change it. Deep inside the twisted thing, Katie sensed something familiar, a core of hunger that reminded her of what Lyra had said about the Devourers. They were not evil. They were refugees, fleeing from something worse. Through her expanded consciousness, Katie reached beyond the temple, beyond the planet. She touched something vast and cold moving through the spaces between dimensions. The Void Lords. They were worse than the Devourers in every way. Where the Devourers consumed, the Void Lords erased. They did not just kill civilizations, they unmade them, removed them from having ever existed. The Devourers had chosen corruption over annihilation, had become monsters to escape extinction. Katie gasped at the realization. The parasites were not weapons. They were desperate attempts at survival. Corrupted seeds hoping to find new hosts, new ways to exist. She made a choice that would change everything. Instead of destroying the parasite, she offered it redemption. Through the bonds, she showed it another path. Showed it that fighting the Void Lords did not require corruption. That standing against entropy and erasure could be done through creation and hope. The parasite hesitated. For 10,000 years it had known only hunger, only the drive to consume and spread. The concept of choice was alien to it. But Katie persisted. She showed it the memories in the eggs, showed it beings who chose to hope. And slowly the parasite began to understand. It could choose too. The shadow thing stopped fighting, stopped trying to break free. Instead, it accepted the bonds, accepted transformation. The corruption did not disappear. It changed, shifted into something new. The parasite became a guardian of shadows, a protector of the spaces between light, still powerful, still connected to another dimension, but no longer driven by mindless hunger. Katie released it, and the transformed being shot through the temple walls without breaking them. It would patrol the dark places, hunt things that hid in shadows, serve rather than consume. The other corrupted eggs sensed what had happened. The parasites inside them felt the change. One by one, they stopped resisting the ritual. One by one, they chose transformation over destruction. 18 parasites were purged and reborn. 18 shadow guardians joined the first to protect the spaces between realities. The remaining eggs blazed with pure light. The corruption was gone. 500 dragon eggs waited clean and whole and ready to hatch. The ritual ended. The 5 bonded pairs collapsed exhausted. The temple fell silent. Katie lay on the cold stone floor with Frost curled against her chest. The little dragon made contented sounds. Through their bond, Katie felt overwhelming satisfaction. "We did it," Brooks whispered from across the circle. Lyra pulled herself up slowly. Ember limped into the chamber and pressed his massive head against her shoulder. The elf woman's eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "You did more than purify the eggs," Lyra said, looking at Katie. "You found a way to redeem the irredeemable. You turned enemies into allies." "What happens now?" Hamilton asked. Prism lay beside her scientist, gleaming like living crystal. "Now we prepare," Lyra said. "The eggs will hatch over the next weeks. We need guardians ready to bond with them, humans who will stand against the Void Lords when they finally arrive." "How long do we have?" Carter asked while Jade nuzzled her face. Katie still felt connected to the vast spaces between dimensions. She sensed the Void Lords moving through the darkness, hunting, erasing. "Years," Katie said, "maybe decades. But they are coming. Then we use that time well." Brooks stood and helped the others to their feet. "We train, we prepare. We build an alliance of humans and dragons and elves and whatever other species want to stand against extinction. The Shadow Guardians can help," Katie added. "They know the Void Lords, know how they think and move. They can teach us to fight beings that erase reality." Over the following months, the eggs hatched one by one. Humans from every colony and world came to Ethermoor. Some bonded with dragons, others joined as support crew and strategists and engineers. The Eternal Guard was born. An alliance of species working together to protect reality itself. Katie Morrison became the first bondmate. Her unique connection to all the dragons made her the natural coordinator. Frost grew larger and more powerful, but never lost the fierce determination of her first moments. Lyra and Ember trained the new Guardians in ancient combat techniques. Despite their weakened state, they were still the most skilled warriors alive. Brooks organized the human fleet into a rapid response force. Thunder's storm powers combined perfectly with human military tactics. Hamilton studied the genetic legacies in the bonded dragons. With Prism's help, she began the long process of bringing back extinct species. Not as they were, but as they could become in this new age. Carter and Jade became the guardians of Ethermoor itself. They made sure the temple remained protected, and that newly bonded pairs had a safe place to learn. The Shadow Guardians patrolled the dimensional boundaries. They were strange allies, not quite trusted, but essential. 6 months after the ritual, Katie stood on the observation deck of the new Guardian station, a massive structure built in orbit around Ethermoor. Frost had grown to the size of a horse and rested beside her. Through their bond, Katie could sense the other dragons, could feel the network of guardians spreading across known space, could touch the minds of allies she had never met. She also sensed the darkness beyond. The Void Lords were patient, but they were coming. Lyra joined her at the viewport. The elf woman looked healthier now, not as strong as she had been before the bond severance, but recovering. "Do you regret it?" Lyra asked. "The choice you made that day when you touched the egg?" Katie thought about it, about the life she had lost, the simple salvage work, the peaceful solitude of space. Then she felt Frost's love through their bond, felt the determination of 500 bonded pairs ready to defend reality, felt hope that had not existed in 10,000 years. "No," Katie said, "I do not regret it." "Good." Lyra smiled. "Because the real war has not even begun." Katie looked at the stars and knew Lyra was right. The victory against the corrupted eggs had been important, essential even. But it was just the first battle. The Void Lords were coming, beings that could erase entire timelines, unmake civilizations so thoroughly they never existed. But Katie was not afraid. She had Frost. She had the Eternal Guard. She had allies who had chosen hope over despair, and most importantly, she had learned that even the darkest corruption could be redeemed. Even the most desperate enemies could become friends when facing a greater threat. The Void Lords would come. And when they did, they would find something they had never encountered before. They would find humanity, unpredictable, determined, united with dragons and elves and shadow guardians and the legacies of 100 extinct species. They would find the Eternal Guard ready and waiting. Katie placed her hand on Frost's neck and felt the dragon's heartbeat through their bond, felt the hearts of 500 dragons beating in rhythm, felt the pulse of hope that refused to die. The war was coming, but they would be ready, and they would not fight alone.